Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. President Barack Obama this week is expanding his call to fight Islamic militants by means other than force. The president hosted a three-day global summit focusing on enabling local communities to counter what he called violent extremism. The president said an honest discussion is needed. He refrained from describing the terrorists as Islamic militants, Muslim extremists, or jihadists.
These terrorists are desperate for legitimacy. And all of us have a responsibility to refute the notion that groups like ISIL somehow represent Islam, because that is a falsehood that embraces the terrorist narrative.
Giving two speeches at the summit, Obama said the effort is ultimately a battle for hearts and minds and a campaign to prevent people from being radicalized to violence. Governments, civil society groups, and community leaders from more than 60 nations were on hand. The President's summit comes on the heels of more Islamic State atrocities. Christians across the world this week mourned the deaths of 21 Coptic Christians slaughtered by ISIS militants in Libya. They were all Egyptian migrant workers. In retaliation, the Egyptian government bombed ISIS targets in Libya. Meanwhile, in Iraq, the BBC is reporting that Islamic State militants burned 45 people to death. They are believed to be captured security forces from the city of al-Baghdadi. Meanwhile, Iraq's envoy to the United Nations charged that the Islamic State is harvesting organs to finance its operations. According to the ambassador, bodies with surgical incisions and missing kidneys and other body parts have been found recently in shallow mass graves. He also said a dozen doctors have been executed for refusing to participate in the organ harvesting. In the ISIS video broadcasting the beheadings, an executioner said, quote, "We will conquer Rome by Allah's permission." In Rome, Pope Francis called the ISIS victims martyrs and said they were killed simply for the fact that they were Christians. Meanwhile, Italy is not dismissing the Islamic State's threats to conquer Rome and the nation of the cross. Italy's Interior Minister, Angelino Alfano, said security precautions around the Vatican are very high and remain so. The head of the Swiss Guard has vowed to protect the Holy Father and placed the Guard on high alert. The Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, said there are no specific threats, but he has warned Vatican officials to be careful, vigilant, without falling into alarmism. In Libya, Tripoli's apostolic vicar has confirmed that jihadi militants are currently in that city, and he fears that Christians could be abducted at any moment. Speaking to Vatican Radio, Bishop Giovanni Martinelli described the situation as chaotic. He further urged the international community to lead talks among the country's warring factions. Back in New York on Wednesday, during an emergency session of the UN Security Council, Libya's foreign minister warned that the Islamic State is indeed a growing threat. ISIS affiliates are now active in at least 10 nations, from North Africa through the Middle East and South Asia to the Philippines and Indonesia. And President Barack Obama's immigration executive action is on hold for now. On Monday, U.S. District Judge Andrew Hanen granted preliminary injunction, or a preliminary injunction, to 26 states seeking to block the president. His unilateral actions would have effectively halted the deportation of as many as 5 million people who were in the U.S. illegally, providing them with work permits. The president said Tuesday that the administration would appeal, and he predicted victory. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, the lead plaintiff, ripped the president in a statement, saying Obama has abdicated his constitutional responsibilities in attempting to circumvent laws passed by Congress and the will of the American people. We'll keep an eye on this story for you. And the Vatican's financial reforms are well underway, but not without some resistance. According to Vatican journalist Andrea Tornielli of La Stampa, heated arguments ensued last week during the consistory of cardinals. Cardinal George Pell's efforts to consolidate all Vatican financial affairs under the supervision of his Secretariat for the Economy was the reason. According to several reports, some offices at the Vatican are balking at the effort, questioning the vast scope of the authority given to Pell's Secretariat. Final rules have yet to be approved. In the meantime, some good news and bad news for the Vatican balance sheet. Cardinal Pell told Crux News that the Secretariat has found $1.5 billion in previously unknown assets. The public announcement of the assets also met with resistance. Cardinal Reinhard Marx, who is president of the Vatican body that supervises Pell's Secretariat, said the disclosing of specific figures was not very helpful, since they were not balanced against financial obligations. On a side note, a German diocese, Cologne, is apparently richer than the Vatican. The diocese now has $3.82 billion in assets. Hundreds of millions of euros are raised annually by that diocese's church tax. And finally, Michel Ferrero, a devout Catholic and the world's richest candy maker, died on Valentine's Day at his home in Monte Carlo. He was 89. Described as a real-life Willy Wonka, Ferrero was the patriarch of the Italian confectionery empire, known for its Nutella, chocolate hazelnut spread, and those little things called Tic Tacs. In 1996, on the 50th anniversary of the company his father founded, Ferrero said, quote, "The success of Ferrero we owe to Our Lady of Lourdes. Without her, we can do little." Ferrero reportedly made an annual pilgrimage to Lourdes, and Marian statues were placed in each of the Ferrero confectionery plants and offices worldwide. Incidentally, the namesake of his famous Ferrero Rocher chocolates is the Rock of Massabielle, the grotto where the Virgin Mary appeared to Saint Bernadette. Michel Ferrero was laid to rest on Wednesday in his hometown, Alba. What a legacy he's left. Unfortunately, I won't be able to enjoy any of it until after Lent.